Hi guys, in today's video we're going to be learning how to use the class notebook to deliver curricular content. Now in this video we're going to be covering 5 main things. Firstly, we're going to be learning how to establish a class notebook within Microsoft Teams, and we'll be learning how the class notebook is structured. Because we'll be using Microsoft Teams, it's important that you have a bit of a background in this already, and I've already done a video on how to use Microsoft Teams effectively. So if you're unfamiliar with Microsoft Teams, that might be a good place to start. Next, we'll be looking at how to create content within the content library of the class notebook. We'll be learning how to distribute content to our learners. We'll be discussing how to instruct our learners on how to post work for the teacher to view. And lastly, and probably most importantly, we'll be learning how to provide meaningful feedback to our learners through the class notebook. Before that though, I'd like to discuss why I think class notebook is a really effective tool for us to be using as teachers. So above all, it's an extremely effective way of enhancing learning, both at home and also importantly in class. For one, it saves us having to physically mark jotters, and actually I'd say it's a much quicker and easier way of looking at your kids' work and providing feedback to them. The feedback that you provide on Class Notebook is actually in many ways more effective than the feedback that we can provide in a jotter. And also it's a really great way of sharing school learning with their families back at home. So those are some of the positive points, but without further ado, let's get learning how to establish a class notebook within Teams. So, as this outcome suggests, you're going to have to be familiar with using Microsoft Teams. So, the first thing I'm going to have to do is navigate to the Teams page, and I'm going to access my class team. In this case, I'm going to go to the demo team that I set up for the previous video. Now, because this is set up as a class team, the class notebook will be available at the top. But at the moment, it's not properly set up, so I'm going to establish it now. So first of all, I'm going to click on the class notebook. And I'm then going to click set up a OneNote class notebook. OneNote is the app through which class notebook runs. And I'm going to set this up as a blank notebook. Now, immediately we get a pop-up telling us what different sections we will have within our class notebook. So we'll be given a collaboration space, a content library, a teacher-only section, and a student notebook for each one of our pupils. For now, I'm just going to click Next. And this is perhaps one of the most important parts to get right. For each pupil that you have here, so you can see the student name will go here, but for each pupil, you can basically give them several different sections. So the default sections are handouts, class notes, homework, and quizzes. Personally, I don't find those sections to be particularly useful. So instead, I'm going to rename these. So the sections that I quite like to have are a literacy section, a math section, an other curricular areas section, and a homework section. And I find these to be 4 quite effective sections to be giving my kids for in-class use. Now think of each of these sections as a separate jotter, if you will. So I've basically given them a place to post their literacy work, a place to post their maths work, other curricular areas, and homework. By clicking Create, every learner, every pupil that I have in my team will get those 4 sections. And the only people that will be able to see it are the student themselves and anyone who's assigned as a teacher. So it's a private section. So I'm going to click Create now. And it takes just a second to get the class notebook ready. Now, one of the main advantages of the class notebook is the fact that any work that a learner posts is private. So yes, you can get learners posting work on the team itself. So you can see the channels at the side here. My learners could well be posting their work in the literacy channel or a maths channel if I had one set up. But certainly learners that maybe are feeling a bit less confident or just don't want to share their work so publicly, the class notebook, because it's only viewable by the teacher, kind of gets over that barrier for many learners. So this is the first view that I get here, and it's just kind of an instructional page to tell me a little bit about the class notebook. If we click on this arrow at the top left here, we can see the different sections available to us within the class notebook. So we have the collaboration space, the content library, the teacher only section, and underneath the teacher only section, the names of each one of the learners that I've added to the team, and they have several personal sections that we added earlier. So the literacy section, the math section, so on and so forth. To start with, let's go through each one of these spaces here that we can use and talk a little bit about their functions. So firstly, the collaboration space. Now, this is a space that all learners can add to, and it's really useful, as the name suggests, for learners to collaborate on particular tasks. So, for instance, let's say we were doing a history task and we wanted to do a KWL sort of activity. What I could do is I could go to the collaboration space, I could add a new section, I'll just call it history. So we've now got a history page within the collaboration space, and I can add separate pages within that. So I might want to do a KWL grid. And because this is a collaboration space, all of the learners would be able to type in here saying what they know already about a given topic. So it's a really handy way of being able to share their knowledge and collaborate on ideas. Just to give you another example of how you might use it, let's say you were doing creative writing. You wanted to have a section focusing just on creative writing, and perhaps you're doing metaphors as a focus. Now, this could just be used as a space for learners to write down their best metaphors that they've come up with, and it's really useful for them just to be able to bounce ideas off one another and share their thoughts. So that's the collaboration space. Next thing I'm going to focus on just now is the teacher only section. This is just a handy place to be able to share content between teachers that is not ready to be shared yet with the rest of the class. Next, we've got the content library, which I'm actually going to focus on in more detail in just a little while, but that is similar to the class materials section in the files section that we covered in the Teams video. And then lastly, we've got the names of each one of our learners. So if I click on the name of a learner here, you'll find that you get a drop-down menu and it has each of the sections that we assigned when we established the notebook. So literacy, other, maths, and homework. So hopefully you are now feeling fairly confident with how to establish a class notebook and have a fairly good idea of how the class notebook is structured. The best thing to do really is just click around and familiarize yourself with it. You can't really go far wrong. Next, we're going to examine the content library and learn how to create content within the content library. So the content library is a fantastic place for basically posting your content that you want to be viewable to learners. Like the class materials folder in the files section, content posted here is only viewable to learners. So the teacher can edit it, but the learners can't make changes to it. So for example, let's say I wanted to set up a separate homework section in here. So I could just type in homework. We've now got a homework section, and I could put today's date. I could assign some homework to the class here, and they would then be able to log into the class notebook and they'd be able to see their homework for this particular day. The handy thing is I can click pretty much anywhere and just start typing. It's actually really easy to interact with this particular interface here. So that would be one thing that I may want to do. Alternatively, I may want to create a particular literacy task. So maybe I've got a worksheet for them to work through, or just a set of instructions on their reading book that I want them to follow. Perhaps some comprehension questions or something like that. I'm going to create a literacy section, and within that I'll create a reading page. I may also date that. It could just be the task for a particular date. And I can treat this just like I would treat any Word document. So I can just add content to it like so. In fact, just to make the point, very quickly, let's knock up a quick maths worksheet. So I'm going to type in maths here, and let's do a page on addition. Here's a quick example that I just knocked up of the kind of work that you might distribute to your learners using the class notebook. So this is obviously on addition. I've put the learning intention at the top. I've got a screenshot of how to solve addition problems. I've also included a link, which I can do by going to Insert and Link. So a video link of how to solve addition problems, and then I've put a task at the bottom. So any of my learners within the class notebook would be able to come to the content library, they'd be able to go to the math section, and they could treat this almost as a textbook. I could have various different pages with different tasks for them to work through. So it's a really handy way of administering work to your learners. You could also include fact files on history, or have a section of text on literacy for them to read and work through. So there's all manner of things that you could create on the content library. And really, the sky's the limit when it comes to it. Anything that you can create in Word or PowerPoint, you can add to the content library. You could drag and drop a PowerPoint in, and learners would then have access to it. If you had a video file that you wanted them to view, you drag and drop it into the content library and they'll have access to it. So really, you can be as creative as you like. This is pretty minimalistic here, but you can really be quite creative. Now, another function to be aware of is the immersive reader function. This is particularly good for learners with additional support needs. So whether this is in the content library or in a distributed page, to use Immersive Reader, what I do is I go to View and I click on Immersive Reader. Now what Immersive Reader does is it enlarges the font of the actual text, and whenever you click on a particular word, it will give you a pictographic representation of that particular word, and it also allows you to listen to the word. So you can see why this might be useful for any learner who is maybe ordinarily having trouble accessing the text. So it can really make our life in the classroom much easier, as it enables learners to kind of help themselves a little bit within class. So that is how we can create content in the content library. However, the thing with the content library is learners can't edit that content, which is a good thing in many ways, but sometimes you want them to be able to actually work on a worksheet, for example. So the next thing we're going to look at is how to distribute content to our learners. So let's take this worksheet that I created in the content library earlier on addition, and let's say that I want my learners to be able to type their answers into this particular sheet here. At the moment, if they were looking at it in the content library, they wouldn't be able to do that, because it's read-only from their point of view. However, what I can do is I can distribute this to my learners. The way I do that is by navigating to the page I want to distribute. Then I'm going to go to Class Notebook at the top here. And on the left-hand side, I have the option to distribute this page. So I'm going to click on Distribute Page, and I've then got various choices. I can distribute the page generally across all of my learners. I might distribute it just to an individual, or I might distribute it to a group. So this is really useful if you're wanting to work with particular groups, or you're wanting to give additional work to a particular child that you need to support in a particular way. It gives you the ability to do that. For now, I'm going to distribute this across all of my learners just now. So I'm going to click Distribute Page. I then have the option to choose which section of their page it will be distributed to. Because this is a math sheet, I'm going to put it in the math section that I created, and then I just click Distribute. Now this will spin for just a wee while it uploads this to all of the learners, but then whenever they log in, they'll be able to see this page and they'll be able to edit it themselves. So if I go to one of my learners now, and I go to the math section, you will see this addition page has now been created, and if they wanted, they'd be able to type in this at will. So if they wanted to actually solve any of these calculations, they could type equals and then put in an answer. So that is how we distribute content to learners. Next, we're going to be discussing how to instruct our learners on how to post work. So let's say that I'm this particular learner here, and I've just done a piece of creative writing, and I'm wanting to share it with my teacher so that it can be assessed in some sort of way. Well, I might navigate to my literacy section. I might create a new page for my piece of creative writing. Then there's various ways that I could post my work for my teacher to view. I could type directly into this document. However, of course, usually we work in a jotter of some sort or another. So a very easy thing to do is just to photograph your jotter. Now, this could be done by taking a picture and inserting it, or dragging and dropping it in if you're on a desktop. However, another thing you can do is just photograph it on a tablet or a phone, and upload it directly using the OneNote app. So literally as we speak right now, I am on my phone, I'm taking a picture of a piece of work, I'm navigating to the OneNote app, and I'm finding this particular notebook. I'm going to navigate to the literacy section, the creative writing page, and within the app I press the camera icon and I can snap a photo directly of the work that I've created. And very quickly you'll find that it will appear. So here is the work that I've just snapped a photo of just now, immediately visible for the teacher to provide feedback on. So you can see how this would easily work as part of a whole class setting. The learners would be able to photograph a piece of work that they're proud of, share it, the teacher can then provide feedback on it, which we'll look at in a wee minute, and it would also be viewable at home as well, so that families can see how their learners are progressing. So hopefully you're now feeling good with how to instruct your learners on posting work. The last thing we're going to look at is how to provide meaningful feedback to our learners. So we have this piece of work here, and we're wanting to provide a bit of feedback on it. Well, we've got several options available to us. First of all, perhaps the most obvious thing, I can just type feedback in here. So I could do the old 2 stars and a wish thing, or half a star and 67 wishes as the case may be, but I can just click anywhere in here and can just type away. That's one option that's available to you. You can also mark directly on the work here. So for instance, if there was, if I wanted to highlight sections of text, I can go to the draw tool, I could go to the highlighter, I can adjust the width of the highlighter, and I'd be able to highlight sections of work that I thought were particularly effective or sections of work that need a bit more attention. I could also tell the learner what the different color codes mean. I could write that this is an effective simile, for example, and that's going to be color-coded in pink. If a learner needs to check their grammar, I could color-code that in a separate color there, and so on and so forth. So you can use the highlighter function. If you were wanting to demonstrate how to solve a particular sum, you could actually draw out the sum beside the work and actually show the correction for them. That's a horrible time sign I've just done there, but you get the idea. You can actually show them how to do the correct version of a particular sum that they're doing. So the markup function here can be really, really effective for assessing work. And in many ways, it's just as effective as a jotter. However, where OneNote becomes more effective than a jotter is by using the audio feature. So I can provide direct audio feedback to my learners. By clicking this audio tab, it will instantly start recording my voice, and the learner will then be able to listen back to the feedback at a time that's convenient for them. They can listen back to it as many times as they want, and so that means that the impact of the feedback that we're giving is greatly increased. It may also be a way of stimulating discussion in the home environment as well. So I think this is a really fantastic feature, and it's a tool that we really want to be capitalizing on as much as possible. The downside of it is that you kind of have to record all in one go. At the moment, it doesn't let you pause midway very easily. However, you could get around that by recording separately just on your desktop and then just dragging and dropping the audio file in. It works exactly the same way. So that's really it, guys. We've examined how to establish a team, we've looked at the content library, we've learned how to distribute content to our learners, we've looked at how to instruct our learners on how to post work, and lastly, we've looked at how to provide meaningful feedback to our learners. Just to finish up though, I'm going to talk briefly about the OneNote app itself, because this is a different way of accessing the class notebook, and it actually provides some additional and quite useful functionality over and above the browser version. So if I open the app here, which I've already got downloaded, you can see that it opens fairly similarly in that it gives me a welcome page. However, there are a couple of key differences. So a lot of the information is actually given along the top here. So I have the collaboration space, I have the content library, and then I have some of my learners' names along the top, and by clicking this tab here, I'll be given the rest of my class down the side here. Now, one of the problems with the browser version is that if a learner uploads work, there's no way of us being automatically notified at the moment. So that means we may have to trawl through lots of learners' notebooks in the hope that we stumble across something that they've updated in the last while. This problem is solved in the app version, as anytime a learner uploads work, their name automatically comes up bold to let us know that changes have been made. Now, this is really helpful as it means that we can identify when a learner has made changes, and similarly, they also get notified if they're using the app in the same way if we've posted any comments. So personally, I much prefer using the app version just for this. It saves us going down a lot of dead ends. So that's it, guys. That's really everything you need to know in order to deliver high quality content to your learners using the class notebook. I'd encourage you just to have a click around, really explore it as much as you can, and enjoy the process. You can't really go wrong with it. Cheers, guys.